Time for an oil change? Head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. We've also got you covered when it comes to oil changes, thanks to Pennzoil Synthetic Motor Oil, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube. Leave worry behind.
This is how we begin this edition of NFL Live. Calvin Watkins of The Athletic reports that DeMarcus Lawrence and the Cowboys expected to meet next week to work on that long-term deal. Lawrence currently playing under the franchise tag. Plus, NBA Twitter, do not get jealous. We're getting in on the Woj bombs. Adrian Wojnarowski joins the show. But why? And what does the NBA have to do with the NFL? Don't worry, though, guys. Adam Schefter's not going anywhere. Don't get nervous. He's still our guy, and we're not going anywhere either. Damian Woody, Dan Graziano, Diana Rossini with you here on this Friday. You know, there are 4 rookie quarterbacks currently battling for starting jobs out in their respective teams. We've got the Jets, the Bills, the Cardinals, the Browns. In Cleveland, receiver Jarvis Landry, he has said a lot about quarterbacks in general. First, it was back in June. He said that his current quarterbacks are better than what he had over in Miami. Then he praised rookie Baker Mayfield, and now he's glowing about Tyrod Taylor. There has been no shortage of positive speak, it seems, in Cleveland. And headed into training camp, head coach Hugh Jackson has said, despite all the Baker excitement, Taylor's going to be the starter. Here's Jarvis Landry on Tyrod Taylor.
Amazing, man. And just, you know, his leadership, his arm, accuracy, and he's ready, man. He's the starting quarterback, and you know, I'm sure that obviously that decision is to Hugh and, you know, the offensive staff and stuff like that. But I'm sure that they've been highly impressed with what he's done through OTAs and the little training camp, mini camp that we have. I think both guys are highly competitive. You know, I know just having to talk to Bake, and you know, I know he wants to play. You know, but obviously, you know, just talking to him too, I understand that, you know, he sees it as an opportunity for him to grow at the position. You know, a guy like Tyrod who's been to the Super Bowl, who's took a Buffalo team that hasn't been to the playoffs, you know, he can learn a lot from Tyrod at the same time. So, you know, I think it's a competition, yeah, but I think, too, at the same time, you know, both guys are definitely qualified for the job.
A lot of optimism in Cleveland, and it really was a busy offseason there, right? The guy you just heard, Jarvis Landry, he came over in a trade with Miami. He led the league in receptions last season with 112, tied for 4th with 9. Then the reliable left tackle, Joe Thomas, he announced his decision to retire. Of course, they're going to miss him there. And then the Browns, they traded for Tyrod Taylor, who led the Bills to their first playoff appearance since '99. Over that same stretch, Cleveland has used 28 different starting quarterbacks. We're not done just yet. How about Carlos Hyde? He signed in March to a 3-year, $15 million deal. He rushed for over 2,700 yards, 21 TDs in his 4 seasons in San Fran. And then finally, of course, Cleveland made Heisman winner Baker Mayfield, the first overall pick in the draft since 2009. Rookie quarterbacks taken first in the draft have averaged nearly 14 starts. First, I just want to point out behind us here, guys, the creativity here. We're really going all NBA on this NFL show. Of course, this is the sign in Cleveland where LeBron's face once was. So now the question, you see what we're doing here?
Who should go there in place of LeBron?
Nice. Oh, yes. Who should be the...
They didn't put Baker up there already, did they?
Okay. Maybe some people did, or maybe some people are thinking that he's going to be the next face of the city. But speaking of the quarterback competition there, do you think that there's actually a quarterback competition in Cleveland at this point?
No, I was at their rookie minicamp. I was at their mandatory minicamp in June. And coming out of that in June, I mean, it was clear Tyrod Taylor's going to start. Baker Mayfield has a lot to learn. They believe they're in a position, because they have Tyrod Taylor, that Baker Mayfield can take as long as he needs to get ready. And if that's all season, they're okay with that. The Browns didn't win any games last year. They only won 1 game the year before. They're not in a big rush. Baker Mayfield's going to be the quarterback there of the future, or else he wouldn't have been the number 1 overall pick. But they have Tyrod Taylor there in order to help steer them through this time that Baker Mayfield needs to become an NFL quarterback as opposed to just a great college quarterback.
Damien, as a former offensive lineman, if you were currently on this Browns team and you have a veteran player like Tyrod Taylor and you have a rookie that is apparently, ready to go. Who would you prefer to have starting for your team at this point?
Veterans are concerned about the here and now. Front office are concerned about the future. So as a veteran player, I want the guy who's going to give me the best chance to win now. And from all accounts, it's Tyrod Taylor. This might be the best collection of weapons that Tyrod Taylor has ever had in his career. So I'm pretty sure he's excited. Obviously we heard from Jarvis Landry. He's definitely excited to have Tyrod Taylor, in the mix. So like Dan said, they're going to give Baker Mayfield time. There's no need to rush him. Even though he's the number 1 overall pick, you got a veteran in place from Tyrod Taylor. Take your time. You're literally going from ground zero on up.
My problem
Literally
is
zero.
Literally. From last year.
Literally.
Right?
Well, with Hugh Jackson's history of indecision, I don't know. I just think that the situation could still be up in the air because he's gone back on his word before. But with that in mind, do you guys see a scenario where Baker Mayfield would get in and become the starter?
I think Tyrod Taylor would have to flop and or get hurt. And I think that's the scenario. Because,
and then you wonder what's flop, though? You know what I mean?
Right. And we've talked about this on the show, right? What's flop? For most teams, it means lose a lot. But in Cleveland, right, I mean, what's the standard? It's a little bit different in terms of what's acceptable for losing, given what's going on the last couple of years. You talk about Hugh Jackson's indecision, and there's some history there, but you have a new front office in place that's calling a lot of these shots in terms of, executing the draft and the free agency plan. And you look at Hugh last year, and this isn't to make excuses. I'm sure they should have won at least one game. But last year, he had Deshaun Kaiser, he had Cody Kessler. He didn't have a veteran in his quarterback room. He didn't have anybody who could teach anybody anything. He didn't have anybody who he could trust to put in a game once the rookie couldn't handle it anymore. Tyrod Taylor, Drew Stanton are there now. The whole thing is different in terms of how you can operate that quarterback situation.
What do you think for Baker Mayfield? Where do you see a scenario where he should go in?
Literally, it has to fall apart.
Would you actually consider not playing him at all, no matter what happens, though, to give him that full year?
If Tyrod Taylor is holding it down, if he's holding the fort down, I mean, even if the season goes like this, where they win, but it's kind of uneven, keep Tyrod in there. Keep him in there.
Ride it with Tyrod. Just
ride it with Tyrod. There's no rush. There's no rush to really throw Baker in. I mean, the fans obviously are going to have their say if they go through a rough patch. But like Dan said, there's a new regime in there. They have a plan for him. So don't deviate from the plan if necessary.
But if he's ready to play and he can actually do it, I think there's some that will take the other side and say, This is your first overall pick. Play the guy. What's the point?
If he's ready to play and the season is lost, which, I mean, again, you would expect it to be. I mean, given how good the Steelers probably are again and how far the Browns have to go, then yes. And I remember talking to Eli Manning some years ago about his experience, right? He was a rookie in 2004, number 1 overall pick, played behind Kurt Warner and got in midway through the season. I think the Giants were 2-6 or 2-7 when he went in. So lost season. And he said, looking back, he was glad that he played that year, even though he took his lumps and lost a lot, because becoming the starter heading into the following season in 2005, he at least had some sense of what it was like. So it probably would benefit Baker Mayfield if he's to be the 2019 starter to play at some point in 2018. But that has to happen once there's no chance of 2018 being anything. And then again, you have to be fair to Tyrod Taylor. If he's been good to you, he's going to be looking for a job next year, and he wants to be coming off a good season as well. So it'll be a tricky situation to manage, but easier than last year for sure.
Well, as we mentioned, Baker, not the only rookie quarterback trying to win a job, right? In Buffalo, there's Josh Allen, Nathan Peterman, and A.J. McCarron. Do you think that Josh Allen has a shot at starting this season, Damian?
Here's what's interesting about this scenario. I think they would like to sit him, but if you look at the guys in front of them, they don't have many starts.
Yep.
So this could be a situation, if he comes out in camp and looks good, I could absolutely see Josh Allen getting a start for the Buffalo Bills.
All right, then out in Arizona, Sam Bradford with that big contract, but he's got Josh Rosen right behind him here. How do you see this playing out?
Right, this is the opposite situation of what Damian was just talking about. Of these guys, Josh Rosen has the most established guy in front of him. Sam Bradford, if he's healthy, gives the Cardinals the best chance to win this year, and it will be the most reliable option. But that if he's healthy is a huge if with Sam Bradford, as we all know. And because of that, you have to think Josh Rosen has at least a chance, but it's tied to the health of the man in front of him.
Perhaps one of the most interesting quarterback rooms right now, the New York Jets, Josh McCown, Teddy Bridgewater, and Sam Darnold. Could Sam Darnold win this starting job, Damian?
I think of all the rookie quarterback situations, I think this one, Sam Darnold is in a situation where he could be most likely to start week 1. I mean, if he's in a situation where, like I say, if he's even, he's leaving. They're putting everything on his plate, and if he proves that he can handle it, he'll be the week 1 starter against the Detroit Lions.
I will see if he'll be ready to go. Todd Bowles says right now, though, Josh McCown is the starter. And right now on ESPN.com, you can read Mike Clay's rankings for the best backfields in the NFL as we break down all these top running backs. You see them right there all lined up. Make sure you check out that article. What we did, though, is we're going to make it TV friendly for you and make it real simple so you are able to understand. Because what we're going to do is we're going to break down, is it better to go through running back through committee or just have that one individual star back? But first, we just want to go through the best backfields that we saw last season, beginning with the New Orleans Saints. You saw some of the sound bites from them just there with Kamara, Ingram, and West. And these are the projected Saints running back stats. 386 carries, about 1,700 yards, 16 TDs, 122 receptions, and 5 TDs. So that is the projection of what these Saints are going to be able to produce this season. But, of course, Mark Ingram out, suspended for those first 4 games of the season. So, Dan, I want to start with you. Do you think they're still going to be the best backfield in the league without Mark Ingram?
Once he's back, I would favor them for the clear number 1 spot. But without him, I think a little bit thin. Then we would look at some of these others. I mean, if you're talking about duos, right, who's done more together than Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman in Atlanta, right? So that's what, I mean, you can argue, I would say Gurley, Bell, Elliott probably better than Freeman. But if you're talking about pairings, and are they the best backfield combo? Without Ingram, I think it takes a little bit of a hit, and I don't think it's a clear number 1, whereas with him in there, it definitely is.
Damian, obviously, as a former offensive lineman, what do you prefer up there? Would you prefer that one main strong guy or the committee?
As an offensive lineman, I usually like the one guy because you usually have to be in sync, and that takes reps in practice, in games. So, yeah, would I love to block for Todd Gurley or, Ezekiel Elliott? Absolutely. But here's the deal, though. The question was, like, who has the best group? Mm-hmm. And we're talking, like, top-heavy teams here. So, yeah, a lot of teams would love to have a Todd Gurley. But we're talking groups here, you got to look at the Atlanta Falcons. I also talked about the Cleveland Browns. I think the Cleveland Browns on paper with Duke Johnson, Carlos Hyde, Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a pretty dynamic group with the Cleveland Browns.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Dan. Do you think that there are any teams out there that are not in Mike Clay's top 5 here that we have listed up here that could maybe break into the top 5 this season that we're missing?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to go against Mike and all the math he does. I mean, I'm sure he spent some time putting this together, and it's not just him picking names out of a hat. But if you look at some of these groups, right, I'm talking about groups. Like you mentioned the Browns, right? And if Nick Chubb is what they think he is. The one that stood out to me that could be a little higher, I thought, was the Eagles, just because Jay Ajayi's been a guy who's functioned as a bell cow to a certain extent. I think Darren Sproles coming back, people probably underrate what his impact could be. Corey Clement is a guy that has performed in the Super Bowl, and they think they can count on him. They got some other veterans on that roster for depth. They got Donnell Pumphrey, who they drafted last year. So I think that situation probably is one that could, through the course of the year, maybe elevate itself into a higher ranking. But
Dave, what do you say? What do you like?
The Bears.
Yeah.
But Bears. I mean, listen.
Tariq Cohen, right?
Yeah, Matt Nagy, head coach, coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs. You got Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen. He's going to find creative ways to have both of those guys on the field and be creative with different packages.
What if Joe Mixon becomes a dominant back here in Cincinnati? Seattle, who knows what they have? They took a guy in the first round, and Chris Carson last year was good until he got hurt. So there's some teams in here that could
This could
elevate.
Be interesting. We've seen rookie running backs lead the league in years past.
The last 2 years.
The last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Could Saquon Barkley perhaps be that third one? And we're actually going to probably talk about that later on in the show. In fact, I can tell you we're going to talk about that later on in the show. Well, Kareem becomes the 6th rookie since the merger to lead the league in rushing. rushing in the second straight after Ezekiel Elliott did it back in 2016. So prior to that, it was Edgerrin James in 99, Eric Dickerson in 83, George Rogers in 81, and Earl Campbell back in 1978. Some great company right there. So here we are in the Verizon film room. And Damien, I want to ask you, what impresses you most about Kareem Hunt? What's your one takeaway from him when you see him?
Well, outside that he's really good at protecting the ball, I think his patience. Coaches always say, as far as running backs are concerned, patience to the hole, and then you explode through the hole. And that's what you see with Kareem Hunt. Allows his blocks to set up. A lot of running backs don't know how to do that. But Kareem Hunt is a guy that came into the league, and that's exactly what he did. Patience to the hole, but boy, he could explode through it. That's why you saw so many explosive runs out of Kareem Hunt in his rookie year.
Well, rookie running backs don't seem to need a lot of time to adjust to the NFL, because we've seen the last two seasons lead the league in rushing. So here the New York Giants have Saquon Barkley. It seems like they're all in on him. Do you think he's going to be able to lead the league this year in rushing?
I think he'll have the opportunity, because I think the Giants are going to want to feature him in that way. I don't think he's going to get pushed a lot by Jonathan Stewart. They want him to be sort of a centerpiece kind of a guy. But those last couple of years have something in common. The Chiefs' offensive line played very well last year, and the year before, Ezekiel Elliott was running behind that vaunted Cowboys' offensive line. It's been a while since we've seen that kind of ability to dictate a game from the Giants' offensive line. I know they made a couple changes at left tackle with Nate Solder, and they drafted Will Hernandez in the second round, but until we see them perform as a unit the way the Chiefs did last year, the way the Cowboys have for the last couple of years, it's hard to assume that'll happen. Plus, Kareem Hunt was a third-round pick that only played because, Spencer Ware got hurt. So sometimes these things come from places you don't foresee. Right. A year ago, if you'd said, hey, a rookie's going to lead the league in rushing, we would have thought Leonard Fournette or Christian McCaffrey, and it turned out to be a third-rounder. So he'll get a chance, and he's got the ability. There's no question about that.
Well, I feel like the Giants organization certainly expects him to do this. All the hoopla around him before he's even touched the field has been almost overwhelming at times. Back here on NFL Live, it happens almost every single year. One team goes from worst to first in the division. So here we go. In 14 of the last 15 seasons, a team climbs all the way from the basement to the top of the division. Last year, it was both the Jags and the Eagles. They went from worst to first. So this week, we went all the way through all the teams that we thought were going to go from worst to first this season. So let's begin. As you can see clearly, this is the NFC West. The Rams winning it at 11-5. The San Francisco 49ers falling in last place at 6-10. Damien Woody, Dan Graziano here with us. They're going to help us go through. We're going to add up as a total to 100% and try to figure out which team can actually maybe go to first. But let's get to the Niner changes in this offseason, right? They put their faith in this guy, Jimmy G. They gave him a 5-year deal worth nearly $138 million. He's 7-0 as a starting quarterback. Everyone loves that stat. Richard Sherman, he comes over from the divisional rival, the Seattle Seahawks, inking a 3-year deal with the Niners. And then in March, they drafted, at least they finally got a tackle with their 9th overall pick to help protect Garoppolo. So here we go, guys. Let's try to figure out, what do you think the percentage chance, Damien, that the Niners are going to win this division this season?
I'm a big believer in... with the Niners?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's been a long worst to first week.
27%.
For the Niners.
I thought
27%. No, not 2. 27%.
Okay.
I'm a big believer in momentum. Okay? How a team finishes the prior season, it carries over to the next season. I think there's a lot of positive energy with this 49er squad. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about Jimmy G and the fact that he's undefeated and all that. Now, teams going to have some film to kind of, study Jimmy G and all those type of things. You got Jerick McKinnon, who came over from the Minnesota Vikings, who's going to get an opportunity. But I think this team is going to be a trendy team to really watch out for in the NFC West.
Yeah, I think trendy. I'm going to go yellow today instead of red. Been red all week. Just want to shake it up on a Friday. 24 I went with, similar to yours. I like them. I think, they finished the season hot. I don't expect Jimmy Garoppolo to win all 16 of his games this year. I think at some point he will lose, yes.
He's going to cool off at some point.
Jimmy, I'm sorry if you're watching. It does happen to the best of them. But I think it's a team on the rise.
Yes.
And I think, they put a lot of pieces around it, drafted an offensive lineman, which I like. I think they're focused on putting him in the best possible position to succeed. Right. And I think it won't be long, even if it's not this year.
Can we please run a news flash thing underneath the bottom of NFL Live right now? Because this is the first time I feel like this was like a very tapered conversation about Jimmy G. I feel like we've gotten very excited about him, but I think I agree with
we
both.
We forgot our bullhorns.
Exactly.
No club noises right now. That's for the weekend. Meantime, in Arizona, lots of changes there. After 5 seasons, Bruce Arians announced his retirement. He was replaced by Panthers defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. And, of course, lots of quarterback movement here. Carson Palmer announced his retirement, and Sam Bradford signed a huge 1-year deal. And they also took quarterback Josh Rosen in the draft. Tyrann Mathieu was released after 5 seasons in that Cardinals secondary. So, very new-looking Arizona Cardinals team from the bench with the coach to the quarterback. So, Damien, let's go here. What do you think? You think they have any shot?
Oh, 15%. Got a new regime, new head coach coming in. Obviously, the quarterback position, you got Sam Bradford, Josh Rosen. We know the case with Sam Bradford has always been the health. So if he can't stay healthy, you got to throw the rookie in there. And 9 times out of 10, when you got a rookie playing, you're going to go through the ups and downs. So because of the quarterback situation and the uncertainty with Sam Bradford, I'm going to give him 15%.
And on top of a first-year head coach.
That's right. First-year head coach. A little bit of a rebuilding team, I think, in Arizona. Some good pieces.
Yes.
A healthy season for Sam Bradford would be a good thing for them and make them better than you think. 8-8 is better than, I had to refresh my memory. I don't remember him being that good last year, right? So, return of David Johnson. Huge for that offense. Missed the whole year, and he makes the whole thing go. So, I could see them surprising, but obviously I don't feel very, very strongly about it putting it down there at 12. I think they're at the beginning of a bit of a rebuild there in Arizona.
Larry Fitzgerald's at home going, we're winning these things.
No?
Sorry, man.
Okay.
All right, how about the Seahawks, though? This season's been defined by who won't be there as opposed to who will be on the field this year, right? Goodbye, Richard Sherman. Goodbye, Jimmy Graham. Sheldon Richardson. See you later. Safety Cam Chancellor appears to has announced his retirement. That was last week, right? But nothing's really official yet there. Michael Bennett, he was dealt to Philly back in March. So rebuilding, renovating, whatever you want to call it, this Seattle Seahawks team looks quite different than what we've seen in the years past under Pete Carroll. So, D, what do you got?
Dana, shh. They don't want to hear about rebuilding in Seattle. But I'll get 23%. Listen, I think they're trying to rebuild on the fly with Seattle. When you have Russell Wilson, who's one of the top quarterbacks in the National Football League, you're going to be in it regardless. I mean, it's been amazing to see the things he's been able to work with and still keep Seattle competitive. But they've endured a lot of changes, but not only players, but coaches. So it seems like there's a turnover of a culture going on with the Seattle Seahawks right now. So I'm going to give them 23% simply because they got Russell Wilson. You got Russell Wilson, you have the best quarterback in the division.
And you have to figure if there's any head coach that is open to change, it is a Pete Carroll, who we've seen him do this in the past before in terms of a culture change. But, Dave, what do you got?
I like Damien switching up the colors. I think it looks nice over there, so I'm going to try and do that myself and copy. But anyway, 25 is what I gave him. Still the best quarterback in the division. But I still don't think they answered a lot of their roster questions. And this offseason opened up a few more.
Right.
I mean, Richard Sherman gone, Cam Chancellor gone. We don't know what the Earl Thomas situation is going to be, how that's going to resolve itself. But on the offensive side of the ball, I still don't know if the offensive line is fixed. I still don't know if they have a solution in the run game. Still don't know what they have at wide receiver after Doug Baldwin. Russell Wilson can do it all himself, as this here shows, right? This is Russell Wilson. He's an MVP candidate if that number's 2 or 3 wins higher based on the way he played last year. So I would expect that to happen again. But as we'll find out here in a few minutes, there's another team in this division that I like better.
Yep, the team that won it last year, and that being the Rams. They picked up Ndamukong Suh on that 1-year deal after he was cut by the Dolphins. Last year's NFC West champs, they also made some big moves, right? Marcus Peters now on the team, Aqib Talib. And they also got quarterback Jared Goff, a very good deep threat wideout, and Brandon Cooks. They, of course, took him from the New England Patriots during that March season there. So, here we go. Damien, let's begin. Do you think that they can repeat here? What are the percentage chances that they're going to do this again?
I like this Rams team.
You guys have picked the team that won it every time.
I like this team a lot.
You think Sean McVay is going to be able to handle the personalities in that defense? Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, two players who in the past have challenged defensive coordinators that have had a lot more experience than a 31-year-old Sean McVay.
Because it's not really about Sean McVay necessarily. Wade Phillips is on that side of the ball, and I trust Wade Phillips to be able to control that side of the ball. Listen, you have Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh. I mean, you probably the best pairing defensive tackles in the National Football League, creating that pressure up the middle. And now you got two ball-hawking corners on the outside with Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters. Then on the offensive side of the football, you got Brandon Cooks coming over. This team, they got that loss last year in the wild card round against the Atlanta Falcons. That'll be something to learn from. This team is only going to get better.
Yeah, and they're hungry. I mean, they are. I remember talking to Sean McVay at the Combine, congratulating him on his great first year, and all he could talk about was that playoff loss.
Yes.
It was still bothering him. So that's a good thing that they're hungry. I gave them 39. I think they have the best chance of anyone to win the division. I think they have the best roster top to bottom in the division. And that's really what we're grading here, right, at this point in the offseason. But, are they going to get the same performance from the veteran offensive lineman they got last year? Is Todd Gurley going to be that kind of player again? How does Brandon Cooks fit? There are some questions to answer, but when you size them up against everyone else's questions here, I think they have the fewest, except for the one Aaron Donald question, which they have to answer in time for camp, right? Rams, pay the man. You need him. Get him in camp, get him happy, and then you have a roster to be reckoned with in terms of winning the NFC, period.
All right, that was the NFC West. We're going to do the AFC West later, but let's just see how you guys did here again. Just to remind your brain, very similar pizza pies there, guys.
We spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, we're keeping the lights on here at ESPN.
I'm noticing that. Yeah. No, can't see one without the other. Back here on NFL Live, it's been a heated debate for years. Guaranteed contracts for NFL players. Well, Todd Gurley wants to see this happen, and he says players might have to strike if they want to make this happen. The current NFL collective bargaining agreement actually ends in 2021. And if you've been on social media lately, you probably came across Russell Okung's tweets lately, really a lengthy series of tweets about this topic, right? Say, considering football's level of brute and eminent physicality, high turnover, as well as the short life cycle of its participants, it would seem to me that NFL players are in the most need of fully guaranteed contracts. And this is certainly something we can debate for a very long time, but we only have a few minutes. But we thought, who better to explain guaranteed contracts than somebody in the NBA, where we see players getting those deals. And this is, of course, our Adrian Wojnarowski, more notably known as Woj, or Woj-Bomb, depending on how you like to call him or talk about him. Woj, thanks for joining NFL Live here.
I could not be more excited.
Really?
To be here.
We're so excited.
I saw him back there. He was bouncing off the walls. He couldn't wait.
I've never been more excited to do anything at ESPN than this. And I mean that.
I agree. I know how supportive you are of this show, but also how much you love the NFL. But we need to tap into your brain here to help us understand guaranteed contracts in the NBA and how the league got to that point where players are getting these kind of deals.
Well, ultimately, it's your ability to negotiate. It's an agent's ability to negotiate it, because there are non-guaranteed deals in the NBA. Every day we're reporting deals that might be like a 2-year deal where there's a team option on the second. Well, that's a non-guaranteed deal. Or there's maybe, 100,000 out of 500,000 is guaranteed. So it is built upon your ability to negotiate it. And I think, smaller rosters in the NBA and less fear of catastrophic injury than you have in football probably contribute to that.
And I think that was Russell Okung's point in that tweet we showed, and that is, as Diana mentioned, part of a series of tweets that were, he's very well informed on the subject, and Russell knows what you can and can't accomplish in a collective bargaining situation, right? Todd Gurley saying strike for guaranteed contracts, but you're not going to get guaranteed contracts put into a collective bargaining agreement. To Woj's point, you have to go get them yourself. Kirk Cousins got one. Kirk Cousins said to the Denver Broncos, the deal's got to be fully guaranteed or I'm not going. And the Denver Broncos went and signed Case Keenum. And the Vikings said, okay, right? And now, so that was a success story. NBA, Major League Baseball, these collective bargaining agreements don't have any provisions that mandate guaranteed contracts. It's about a player and an agent once upon a time insisting, and then another one insisting and exercising his leverage until that became the norm. So the answer to Russell's question about, how do you get guaranteed contracts given the need for them in the NFL is go get them. Make sure you insist and tell the teams you're negotiating with, if you want me, this is what it's going to take.
I'm staring at you because I'm thinking, all right, there's one person here that's actually played the game. What are your thoughts? Do you think that NFL players deserve guaranteed contracts?
Do I think yeah, absolutely. Of course I'm going to always advocate for the players, but again, as Woj and Dan has talked about, if you want a deal like that, then you have to advocate for yourself to go out and negotiate those type of deals. But again, this is a numbers game. We talk about in the NBA where, it's 450 players in the NBA, whereas in the NFL, it's 1,700 players. Much bigger pool, and you're talking about a sport that is a very violent collision sport. So you got to understand where the owners are coming from at the same time. If we're going to go down this path, it's not going to really be conducive to their business. So that's going to be a sticking point, something you're going to have to fight over. And the high-end guys can achieve that. It's the guys that's in the middle and to the back end of the roster. Those are the guys that I don't see them being able to get guaranteed contracts.
Yeah. It's anybody who can flex some leverage.
Right.
And I'm look at the rookie deals, right? How many of the 32 first-round picks this year in the NFL, how many would you think get fully guaranteed deals? It's not all 32. It's 22, right? The 23rd pick in the draft, Isaiah Wynn from the Patriots, his contract is 99.11% guaranteed. Why? I mean, why not? If you're Isaiah Wynn, say to the Patriots, come on, you got to be nickel and dime in your first-round pick over 1% of the contract. You lost 2 tackles in free agency. You want to explain to your fans why your number 1 pick's not in camp, or do you want to give me 100% guarantee? Push on it, insist, and get it. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to walk away and send you back in the next year's draft.
They're not going to just give it to you. Like you said, this is all about leverage. You got to have leverage, and it got like Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack. Those guys have leverage.
Yeah.
So flex it.
And the one place you really see it too, the NBA has the least relevant preseason. Like most people don't even know the NBA preseason is going on because there's really very few jobs on the line. It's usually maybe the 14th or 15th player is fighting for a spot. Where in the NFL, jobs are absolutely on the line. Positions are in question. Who's going to start, and also who's going to make the roster. And the NBA, you can almost before training camp, you probably can guess 15 out of 15 in cases. And no less than probably 14. And that's where you see it manifest itself, too. Well,
you're always talking to agents and GMs, owners. Why does it seem easier to negotiate in the NBA than it does in the NFL?
Well, part of it, too, is the max contract in the NBA, where the superstar, a LeBron James, a Kevin Durant, they can be creative, do shorter deals. And you've seen Durant take less money here in some years to allow them to keep other players on their roster. But the superstar is really naming his deal. Chris Paul, he got a 4-year instead of a 5-year max deal. He probably did the Rockets a favor. That 5th year would have been like $48 million when he was in his late 30s. But by doing the 4-year deal, he kind of kept a little flexibility for the organization. But I think the max contract, especially with the players people really care about, takes a lot of the negotiation out.
Yeah. And that's a critical difference with the NFL because the NFL has all kinds of mechanisms designed to keep the high-end guys from hitting the market as long as possible. The salary cap, first of all, but the franchise tag, the transition tag, the 5th-year option on first-round picks, right? All these things. So that's why what Cousins did and what Tremaine Johnson did as a cornerback with the Rams on a smaller level, a different position, whether 2 franchise tags, take them. 2 fully guaranteed franchise tags. It's a lot of money now. The cap keeps going up, and the franchise tag numbers keep going up. So you can do it. And then you're at the point, Le'Veon Bell's going to be here next year if he doesn't get a deal in the next week and a half, where you can't franchise a guy. It doesn't make any financial sense to do it 3 years in a row, and now you become a real free agent. That's when you make the real money.
Will a strike work, though? Will a strike actually make this change?
Well, first of all, it would be a lockout. I just want to clarify that, from what's his name from the Rams?
Todd
Gurley. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's a lockout, and I've been through one of those. Listen, one thing you got to understand, and it's always been an issue with the NFL, is keeping guys united.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not necessarily about the high-end guys. Okay, it's the lower guys. And once you start missing checks, see, the owners play the long game. They don't think about missing 1 or 2 games. They're thinking, you know what? If we go a whole season, can you withstand that? Right. And they're betting that all you guys can't withstand losing all those checks, and they're still collecting money from the television side. Think about that.
Yeah.
When they negotiated the television rights, they negotiated to the point where if there's a lockout, we are still getting paid.
Yeah.
And
that's what you have to overcome if you're a player in the NFL.
That's the critical difference historically. When Major League Baseball owners wanted to institute a salary cap in 1994, the players walked out in mid-August, canceled the World Series, and didn't get back on the field until the owners took the salary cap idea off the table. That's why there's still no salary cap in Major League Baseball. That's the only way to do it.
And here in the NBA, and I'm sure it's NFL, it is a lot easier to keep 30 people together versus 450, and 30 who financially, the richest to the poorest owner, is a lot tighter gap than LeBron James to the last player at the end of a team's bench. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I have about 10,000 other questions. Any NBA news to break, by the way? You didn't even check your phone. Schefter, are you watching? You went a full 5 minutes and didn't even look. I think maybe you peaked quickly.
Yeah, maybe.
But we appreciate you joining the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm a fan.
Just a phenomenal job, too, in NBA free agency.
Thanks.
We look forward to seeing you in Vegas for Summer League.
It's a normal day. You're rushing out the door to get to work on time when suddenly, there it is, the dreaded service light. So what is it this time? Tire pressure, low coolant, time for an oil change? When it comes to service lights, head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. Drive in today and make the switch to Pennzoil. Ask for Pennzoil Synthetics, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube, leave worry behind.
All right, it happens every year. One team goes from worst to first in the division in 14 of the last 15 seasons. A team climbs all the way from the bottom to the top. Last year it was the Jags and the Eagles. So this week we're going to, or at least we have been discussing all week long. Let's get into the AFC West, where we saw the Chiefs win it with that record of 10-6 and the Broncos falling at 5-11. And Denver had a lot of changes in this offseason, right? They suffered their worst season there, and they signed Case Keenum in the offseason. And, Keenum finished second in QBR in 2017, so that's a good move for them. Meantime, Denver made linebacker Bradley Chubb the 5th overall pick, and they also traded for veteran tackle Jared Veldheer. So, here we go, guys. What are the chances that the Denver Broncos go from last place to first? Dan, I want to start with you. Give me a percentage here. It's going to total 100 when we're done with this. But
by the way, we haven't messed that up all week. Every single one of these has gotten to 100.
Oh, and
I'm proud of us.
That's right.
We deserve a pat on the back.
It's pretty good.
I got an 800 on my SATs.
I gave him the LeBron 23%. I don't hate the Broncos roster. I still think there are some questions to be answered on the offensive line, but I think, this is a division that was tightly bunched last year, only a 5-game gap between first and last place. And I think this is a team that if Case Keenum plays well and those wide receivers play the way they used to and they figure something out in the run game, could surprise some people if it continues to bunch that way.
You have more belief?
We're along the same line, 24.
Okay.
I think this is a situation where, again, like Dan said, I think this is a highly competitive division, the AFC West. I like the fact that they got some stability at quarterback with Case Keenum. That's been like the real problem for the Denver Broncos for a while now. And like Dan said, the wide receivers, they need to step their game up defensively. I think defense will be pretty good this year. So if offensively, if they can make some plays, get some explosive plays out of those guys, they could absolutely contend for the AFC West.
All right, lots of changes with the Raiders, right? John Gruden, 12 games over 500 with the Raiders when he was with them back in 98, and that was good enough for the franchise to bring him back. The Super Bowl winning coach hasn't been on the sidelines since 08, but he is back to lead Derek Carr. Jordy Nelson came over after Green Bay let him go, and Martavis Bryant was brought to the Raiders through that trade. So, Dean, what do you think?
I think too much change. I mean, that was a team that won 12 games a couple of years ago. I'm not sure how bad that roster must have been, but they overhauled it. I give them 20% in case I'm wrong and John Gruden's right, which, got to be honest, there's a pretty good chance that happens. He knows a little more football than I do. But I'm a little worried about this team, especially if Derek Carr doesn't bounce back.
Yeah, I'm going 23.
Okay.
I just think like they need to be like Benjamin Button, like age backwards. Like
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean they got like older guys, but they need to play like they're younger.
You don't think John Gruden, though, can come in here and be a bit of a quarterback whisperer for Derek Carr here? Because if Derek Carr can play,
they got to do this too.
Are you writing Benjamin?
No, pay the man. They got this is another pay the man, right? Khalil Mack.
Can he be a whisperer? Can he be a whisperer for that defense? That's going to be the key for the Raiders.
Yeah,
the defense.
All right, David, you've been hot on the Chargers for the last few weeks, and they also made a lot of changes, of course. The big splash, they brought center Mike Pouncey, the 3-time Pro Bowler, played all 16 games last season. But tight end, guys, big question mark, right? They had that horrible thing happen with Hunter Henry because he's out for the season after that knee injury during those off-season workouts this coming after they had just released longtime Charger Antonio Gates. So, Dan, do you see the Chargers with a chance of winning this?
I think they have the best chance to win this division. I actually think they'll bring back Antonio Gates. I look for that move to happen in a couple of weeks if they can get the details worked out. But, I like their roster the best. They always, start 0-4, 1-3. If they can avoid shooting themselves in the foot. I think about Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football, right? And she always yanks it away at the last minute. If they can finally kick that thing through the uprights, I think they got, and literally, by the way, because that was a big problem for them last year, too.
Big problem.
I think they have the best team in the division.
27. And that just shows you what I think about this division. It's going to be tightly contested, but I think of all the teams, the Chargers, I'm on the bandwagon. I'm riding with the Chargers this year.
It's like you're barely hanging on.
Yeah, I know they're barely. Yeah, but I'm on the Chargers.
If you were, why didn't you go 100 then?
Because the division. I think it's just the division is really tight. I love the Chargers defense.
Yeah,
I think they're going to have one of the best, maybe the best defense in the National Football League this year.
Well, Kansas City certainly is going to look very different, especially at that quarterback position. Alex Smith, see you later. Patrick Mahomes taking over under center, but other things, right? They lost cornerback Marcus Peters, and Sammy Watkins is now on the team. He signed that 3-year deal in March. So, Dan Graziano, what are the chances that the Kansas City Chiefs win?
I worry about the defense. I worry about the volatility inherent in a young, inexperienced quarterback. I give him 26% because Andy Reid makes the playoffs, right? Like somehow he does it. So I can't rule them out completely, even though I do expect them to drop off a little bit.
Same thing. 26%.
Even in
Andy
the same
Reid,
color.
all he does is make the playoffs. Listen, you got a young guy in Pat Mahomes at the quarterback, highly talented guy.
Yep.
But, low on experience. Got a lot of weapons out there, but the change needs to happen on defense. They have a lot of question marks on the defensive side of football.
All right, let's take a look at how this looks all together for both of you. Our little pizza pie chart here. You both love the Chargers. You're all in on that, but as you guys have been saying this entire time, it is going to be a very, very competitive division.
I'm going to miss you, man.
I know, man.
Separation anxiety this weekend. I'm sure we'll see you guys next week. Well, the good news is we have someone to replace you. As you saw, we had Woj on our show. And look, our top insider, Schefter, tweeting out, obviously loving the fact that Woj was joining the show. And you got to figure these two probably have so much in common dealing with all that inside information. You talk to both of them in person, they're always on their phones. But we get it. I still want to know, who do you think the faster typer is? I feel like we need to rate.
I'm not getting mixed up in that.
No way, man. Diana, you're not getting me in trouble with this one.
Have you ever noticed?
We can work that out.
They
can work that out on a podcast.
They're like two
something.
titans.
I know. Have you ever noticed, though, like, Woj very rarely makes any errors. Like, I can't even type my name without making mistakes when I'm on Twitter. But he's got it.
That's what you call a professional.
He is.
Yes.
All right, NFL Live is off on Monday. We'll see you back on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.